Hello and welcome to episode 26 of Area Control Bros. We almost didn't make it. The
But we
path
did
from
make it.
we did. The path from 25 to 26 was long and it was narrow. Perhaps it even had myriad paths, but nonetheless we made it and we're here to talk about two games today. And we've got other games in the pipeline. Although we did not uh podcast that many times in the intervening time, we did play a lot of games, and so we've got stuff in the pipeline. So don't you guys
Yeah.
worry.
It's good to have stuff in the pipeline. I'm excited. We've got a few things lined up, really. Today should
Yeah.
be an exciting episode. I feel like we've got two really interesting games to talk about.
Absolutely. Both space themed. In one case, I guess the space theme was a little bit not exactly
Not
space,
both in
not
space,
both in
No.
space, but
One
but
is
both space themed in a
one is
way.
people going to space and one is space coming to people.
that's
Yes. Yeah.
or sometimes people being sucked into parts of space. Anyway, yeah, we're talking about Shia, Legends of a Drift System, and Silos. Of course, Shia, not really an area control game, more of kind of a little bit of everything game. Open world insofar as that can be a board game thing. But a little bit of pick up and deliver, a little bit of area control, a little bit of exploration, a
Right.
little bit of combat.
To me, it's like a experience system. And what I
Yeah.
mean by that is like this game is very much designed to be Shia. It's so unique in that. Like I can't think of any games quite like it. I mean, so much focused on the exploration, the running around. It has that pick up and deliver as like a very, prominent feature, but it doesn't feel like other pick up and deliver games to me at the same time.
So yeah, just go through a couple stats. So Shia is kind of interesting. I believe it was originally a crowdfunded project. The devs, it was like a one-man project or like a one man and his friend group playtesting with him type of project.
It feels
And
like that.
yeah, and they've since crowdfunded another game called Iridia, which I think was a big success on crowdfunding, which is completely different genre. It's like a co-op campaign game. But anyway, this game definitely feels like the kind of game that's like every week you get the guys together, play test your game, and every week you add one more mechanic.
Mm,
That's kind
yes.
of how this is. The weight is 3.19, so I'm going to round up to 3.2. And I think it's one of those things where no single mechanic in this game is that complex, but there are a lot of mechanics. There are a lot of small mechanics.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're going to be in the rule book on this one, and you might get to the end and feel like, oh, that game actually isn't that complicated. And you're going to be wrong, because that's what we did, or at least that's what I did after the first time we played this. When we came back the second time, I was like, oh my gosh, like I feel like I actually still know nothing about how this works. Like I thought I wouldn't be in the rule book as much, looking up things as much. But if you're not playing this back to back or, one week after the next. Some of these small nuances in the rules do just kind of slip the mind and require more referencing. And I think it would be, you know, easy to miss something as well. I'm sure that there's something that we've missed. We certainly did the first go around, although maybe not to any great effect.
I think there's also a good amount where some of the information I would like readily available is just in the rule book somewhere. Like crossing a planetary boundary is like a little chart that you roll on, and
Mm,
has different effects if you like roll on it. So it's like anytime somebody is like considering crossing a planetary boundary, whether or not they're going to do it, it's kind of like, well, we better look up what the odds are on that and whether or not I want to do it, you know?
yeah.
I think that I'm sure I have not checked, but I'm sure there's like a BGG file that's just like all the different tables. And I
Yes.
think like just printing that off and, laminating it if you really love the game is probably like that's what if I were teaching the game, I'd probably be like, okay, let's print this off and just have this on the table and
Absolutely.
and have this ready to consult. And that probably helps a lot. And while we're
I,
talking
I've
about
just I've just found it. It's
okay, yeah, I was gonna say
on
that has
on
to exist.
BGG. Come on, people, log in. download the Xia player reference glossary and index in English version 1.1. And it's got everything you need. I'm looking at it. This looks awesome. It has all the charts that you could ever want. It tells you
There you
what all
go.
the different resources are, where they're purchased from, where you can sell them, where they're mined. It has everything. And this is what you need with the game. You're flying blind without it. You're going to be in the rule book a lot. So that would probably be a, step number one, you know, if you were making a second printing of this or a third printing or whatever it might be.
I think this is the second printing that I own. So yeah,
It must be because there's that expansion that you have.
I think it. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly the history of this game, but I want to say that. Well, I hope that in any future printings or like additions to the game that they do sort of make some really nice player aids. Because I don't really, I mean, just as a preamble, I don't really have a whole lot of complaints about this game, but I do think this is a game that would benefit from like a high effort player aid for sure.
Yeah.
Um,
I should pause to say that as well. I actually don't have much in terms of complaints for what this game does. It is very much about, the support structure for how it does it, right? And that is largely solved by a better player aid.
Yeah. Yeah, just better information.
Mm.
I think this is a game that I don't mind knowing what the distribution of some of the stuff is. Like I definitely the player aid sounds like it has the distribution of where like what buys what and what like the various tiles kind of are. There is sometimes with this game where you have a mission that has is referencing a tile that isn't on the board yet. So like being able to actually go and know like okay, well this is the planet I'm looking for, you know. I don't
Yeah,
know.
absolutely. Yeah. I think that is one thing that's important to note as well regarding, the ability to get missions that you cannot complete because there'll be that pick up and deliver and you're just drawing from a random pile. Inevitably, especially early on, there are going to be a ton of missions where it's like, okay, now you need to deliver to this planet that is not out on the board. And there's no telling whether that planet is going to come out next or if it is going to be the very last planet that comes out.
yeah,
Um,
pretty much.
so that is one thing to keep in mind. I think that that might not work for everybody, but if you know to expect that and know that you're not going to necessarily be finishing a bunch of quests early on in the game, that's more of like as the map has sort of filled out more, you're going to be doing more quests. If you enter it with that mindset, I feel like there's not really a problem with the quest system. But I could see somebody being really frustrated if they started out this game and, they were like, oh, that quest doesn't work for me. I'm going to fly around and get another quest and see if it'll work. And perhaps caveat, we have a house rule where you are allowed to look at new quests without first discarding your old quest. We allow you to look and then choose and discard the old one, or not take one of the new ones.
I didn't even know
Uh,
that was the base rule, was that you just
yeah,
have to
the
like
base rule is that if you have an active quest and you want to look for more quests, you must first get rid of your active quests, or you just forego looking at the new quests. They
Is that a
tried to
house?
solve
Is that a
that.
house rule or was it one of the tweaks in Embers?
The way that they tweak that in Embers is a little bit different. They are trying to address the same problem, but they do not do it in the same way. Instead of allowing you to look at new quests without discarding your old quest, they introduce a system where you do not look at your quests until the end of your turn. So
Mm.
basically, what you would do is you would fly around to a bunch of different quest points because you're looking to get a new quest to try to do on the next turn. And maybe you even go to like, four different quest points or something like that. And you're drawing, the three quests or whatever. I think it's the three quests each time.
yeah.
Um, so if you were to go to four different quest points while you have no active quest, you're going to get 12 quests to choose from at the end of your turn. But you don't even look at them during your turn. And then once you have one out of those 12 and you pick it, the next turn you're not allowed to look at more quests unless you discard that.
Mm.
Don't know why they tried to solve it in that way instead of, what our house
I
rule is. I like our house rule on that. But to each their own.
I can see why they did it that way, and this it might help with like lowering the time that somebody takes to take their turn. Because
Maybe because you're looking at it at the end of the turn while other people are going, and
yeah,
Something to do in the
or you're not
downtime.
looking at
Yeah.
them, because you're saying I have a quest already. Me personally, I think that if you trust the player group, they can look at the three quests and go, this planet is in, I will keep that one and throw out the other ones. I don't
yeah.
think
Yeah,
it
it
actually
is
has to take that long after you get the general idea of how the quests work.
it is interesting because like this game plays up to five, and I'm gonna go out on a limb and say I would probably not play this with five people because I think the downtime would be pretty crazy. But I would bring it up to say that if you were playing it with five, then you probably would want to implement every like possible streamline tweak to sort of make each individual turn shorter and increase the amount of things you could do during the downtime.
That is
Um,
fair. Yeah, that
but
probably
with
is a better rule for five.
but with three, I think it's fine for us to do it the way we're doing it. Ultimately, it's not like a big deal in terms of like the impact it has on the game. It's just giving the player a little bit more agency and like figuring out what they're doing.
Yeah.
Um, the missions themselves are really funny, and I do like being able to see more of them and like pick and choose the right one for sort of maybe, as Blake said, like the planet that is not listed on this isn't even on the board right now. But I had a really funny situation in the first game where rather than get rid of that quest, I had like a quest to bring a couple of wealthy tourists to a planet, and the planet was not on the board. And the logical thing to do would have been to just get rid of the quest. But I was like, no, I'm gonna pick up the tourists without knowing where I'm going, and then we're just gonna blind jump through
Oh.
space until we arrive. And so we had some sort of like, insane, zany adventure through space that
Yes.
eventually resulted in me illegally going through the planetary shield to drop them off. And
Right.
you can just kind of picture for yourself like these wealthy tourists, like their clothes are all disheveled and their hair has been blown out and
Yeah.
everything,
You've driven
stepping
them
out,
through like three different asteroid or ice asteroid fields and
you know.
Yeah, near
know,
a
And,
pirate haven. Yeah.
yeah,
yes.
so
Picked up a
sometimes
bounty while you're doing it.
I think a lot of the conversation on this game for me, or at least a lot of the brain space, is like there are ways to sort of optimize your time playing this game, but I firmly believe that is not the way you should play this game. I
Right.
think you should really embrace the experiential aspect of this game, which is that it's designed to be, and I think it does deliver sort of this sandbox for just funny stuff happening. And
Right.
I think you have to be ready for that coming in. Like you have to understand this is not like a Euro game. This is like a very wild, lots of dice chucking, lots of unexpected events think happening type of game. But you sort of have to think like this is 100% going to be like beer and pretzels, like wacky stuff is going to happen, and we'll just roll with the punches, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't put it better, really. The things that I remember about this game aren't the moments where I won or lost or gained an advantage or lost an advantage. It is the zany stuff. It is Will's adventure around the galaxy trying to drop off these tourists. It's, towing the derelict Hulk into a black hole and having it get lost there so that nobody can pick up this free level 3 ship. It is Ben putting so many thrusters on his ship that he's like, zooming around the map at like Mach 10, it's stuff like that I remember with this much more. Or in our more recent game, I think perhaps even funnier, Ben trying to like on turn one start blowing Will and I up and just like going full blaster mode and just seeing how it works. And stuff like that is great in this game. The roles of, oh my gosh, now you're like fully iced out because you were trying to mine too hard on the asteroid, whatever it might be. That is the interesting stuff. That is the fun stuff. It's not the Euro aspects, the incremental advantage.
Yeah. Yeah. I like the pick up and deliver too. It's always like I think the first game we found like a pretty lucky one where it was like actually able to do kind of like a trade route pretty easily. But I think most of the time the pick up and deliver is going to be about as hard as the quests. Like,
Yeah,
there's a good amount where it's like either you're going to have to go mine in some dangerous asteroid field, and like get some resources and then sell them that way, or like the people who are like making the stuff that the other people want are halfway across the galaxy. You're gonna have to take some kind of you're gonna have to take a couple turns or some weird route to get over there.
Absolutely.
And I will say, while it's still sort of fresh, regarding the rules and the weight of the game and sort of the player aid stuff, I will say one thing about this game is that a lot of the rules kind of make sense in the like context of the game.
Mm,
It's just there are a lot of them, so it's hard to remember like all the minutia. But a lot of them are like, oh, like that makes sense, you know?
yeah.
Like I don't think there are many where it's like that's weird. Most of them are like, sure, it's space, such and such thing kind of makes sense. I think in the aforementioned situation where we had the event come out where tier 3 ship like a derelict tier 3 ship shows up and you have to mine it, you have to drag it back basically to the hub in order to claim it. And then Blake, to sabotage Ben dragged it into a black hole and of course was sucked into the black hole himself in the process. We were in this situation where there's no like explicit rule in the book, in the rule book that says like if you are towing normally when you tow a Hulk, like when you're towing the Hulk, it reduces your movement by one, or I guess it reduces it by half technically.
Yeah,
Yeah, it
you
takes
would
twice as
have it.
much movement.
It takes twice as much
Yes.
movement to move. And we were like, well, wouldn't it make sense that if you're sucked into the black hole, which normally ignores movement and drags you a set amount of spaces, that it drags you at half the speed? Of course, there's nothing in the rule book about this. We were just like, yeah, I think that makes sense, and we just kind of played it that way. This is one of those kinds of games where it's like, just imagine that you're flying around in space. If a weird situation happens where the rule book does not address it, just go with your gut. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's probably going to be fine.
I'd say so. There are some things like that, you know, maybe you just make the ruling on the spot, even if it might be findable in the rule book. And it's like, we'll revisit this. Can't take this one too seriously. It is a sandboxy game. It is an experience-based game. Um, I wouldn't recommend bringing this and playing it with people you don't know unless you're, planning on knowing them, I guess.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure how much fun this would be with strangers.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
it's it's because it's very informal. I think like the sort of games that are like very regimented are easier to play with strangers because you don't need to like break the ice with them as much. Sort of like these are exactly the rules of the game and this is how you play the game, and we can interact in this context until we get to know each other better. But I think with this game, because it is so like inherently a bit silly and informal in
Mm,
its nature, and certainly like if you're playing with people you don't know, they're probably not going to take kindly to like, maybe one guy role playing as the pirate and just like trying to blow you up.
right.
They may like be offended by that, even though it's usually kind of funny. And the rewards for blowing somebody up, like being blown up is not going to set you back that much, honestly, unless you're carrying some like really amazing cargo. But like the punishment for dying in this game is not big, and that's good because you'll die a lot. The ship
Yeah.
will explode for any number of reasons.
I think important on that point, the punishment for dying in the base rule set is basically negligible for level one ships and impossibly large, like so ridiculously large that it doesn't make any sense for level two and level three ships because you lose an entire turn as a level two or level three ship. And it's like that doesn't, that could be 40 minutes of your life that you're just sitting there waiting for something to happen. It doesn't make any sense. They have updated that in the expansion, and it's a rule that you don't need the expansion to be able to do. What they do instead of level one ships have, just respawn at the start of their turn, and level two and level three lose a whole turn. They've made it so that level one ships, level two ships, level three ships, they all respawn at the start of their turn, but they take damage equal to their level. And I think that's a lot more fair, a lot more balanced. And there are a number of rules like that in the expansion where it feels like, you know, yeah, this was a game that was, made by sort of an indie dev doing his own thing, making his own game. The expansion feels like the people got their hands on it and had some notes and that those were taken into consideration. And I think that you want to play with most of the expansion rules. They're addressing real problems with the game.
Yeah. Except for the trade board. I think the trade board is adding
Yeah,
Like
that's
Yeah,
just some
true.
yeah,
weirdness.
we're
Tell
not.
us about the trade board.
Yeah,
The trade board is like this little economy board where like it's different scarcity for the resources. And so if you like sell all of the resources that are on the trade board, then like you get to get an extra bonus $1,000, which is kind of negligible. And like you only take stuff off of the trade board if you're buying it from like a planet, and then the planets like produce a different thing when you sell it to them, and then that goes on the trade board. I don't know. We thought it worked a completely different way the first time we played. And then we find out that it's actually like more complicated, and it seems like unnecessary,
it's
like
worth.
overhead,
Yeah,
you
is it
know?
weight that like adds enjoyment to the experience?
Well, it's
No.
worth mentioning as well that I think Blake is totally correct. I think Embers feels like it's like the result of feedback. I think everything in the expansion is modular, so you can just not add the economy board, and like that's fine. Like none
Mhm.
of the modules in the expansion are mandatory. And I would say that of them, I pretty much want to add all of them except for the economy board. And it's a part of it is that I feel like every time we play, we get the event that crashes the economy board and like messes up all the trade system and stuff. And it's like already kind of hard. I mean, it's already kind of hard to make the trading work. And so I don't think it needs like an additional layer of complexity, honestly.
Yeah,
But
no, I agree.
mm,
Yeah, it is unnecessary overhead without I mean, maybe you can come up with like some cool strategic plays where it's like, oh, well, I'm mining this resource from this planet, which I sell to this planet, and that planet, it's going to do something with that resource. It's going to produce this other resource that then I can take and sell to a third planet. You know, those plans are basically impossible to really put together until the whole map is out or very close to out. And that's going to be the end of the game. You don't want to have an economy set up that doesn't work until the end of the game. Shia already has enough of that where, oh, I got this quest and I can't do it because, the planet isn't out. Or, oh, we got a new planet that will buy a certain resource, but I don't yet have a planet that can sell me that resource. When you add on this layer of like, not only do I have to find a place to buy one resource and sell that resource, I also have to like, worry about whether the market even wants more of that and, whether, we're going to produce more of the resource that I'm buying. So now you're introducing a third one. It's just a lot of extra crap for seemingly, no benefit. Sometimes you're going to get the extra 1,000 credits, and other times you're just going to have, an extra deterrent. And I think much more often you're going to have that extra deterrent. So I'd rather play without it as well.
Yeah, yeah. I think this game it makes me think a little bit about that MTG thing where they have the different like archetypes of players. And I
Mhm.
think to the point that we were making earlier, I don't think that this is like for somebody who's competitive. Like if you're like in like playing games to have the satisfaction of like winning, um, I don't know. I don't think this is like really going to do it for you. Um, which I think is part of the reason it's more beer and pretzels. Like I think this is very
Yeah.
much for the like I don't know, like the Timmy or whatever the archetype is, where it's like
Right.
explosions,
it's
you know?
Timmy, Johnny, and Spike.
Yeah.
And
It's
Spike, I think Spike is the competitive player. Yeah, so this is not a Spike game, but
No.
this is a Timmy and Johnny game
right.
if we're going this route. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fun. I interestingly to add another shade to that analogy for those that aren't in the know on the Timmy Spike and Johnny. Um, I find Twilight Imperium to sort of be that way, where if you go into TI, where it's like, I need to win, or like, I will have fun when I, am victorious in a battle, I feel like you're setting yourself up for failure. TI to me is another very story-based game, a very experiential game of like, we're gonna be here a long time. Someone's gonna win, sure, but it's like I'm here to have fun. And I actually get a similar vibe from Shia as TI, and not in small part from it being a big old space game where you're moving a ship around, but
Yeah.
you know,
I think it's important to think of Shia through the lens of fantasy. Like I think it has a fantasy that it fulfills pretty well, which is like I'm gonna be like a rogue trader, like
Yes,
space cowboy, you know. I think that's like the
absolutely.
goal is to make you feel that way. And like I think it delivers on that. Similarly, I think TI4 has a very strong fantasy of like being a like the president,
Yes.
like and being like of like a small like balkanized country. I think that's like what TI usually does for me is like, what would I do if I was in a position of power? How do I negotiate and like talk to
Yeah.
the other presidents? How do I engage in politics? And this one is very much like how are we gonna make money to eat this week?
Th-
What are we
There,
gonna
Right.
do?
there's a fundamental difference between this game and TI4 though, which is that I think if we're going back even further to even more fundamental descriptions of the conflicts of humanity, TI4 is man versus man, and this game is man versus nature.
Mm. Yes.
Yeah.
You know,
Absolutely.
and man versus nature, and sometimes also man,
Yeah. The
but
man
not.
versus man element here is
There's
much
also
smaller.
there's also man versus self in Thea,
Yeah,
I think as well.
Yes,
yeah. It's
absolutely.
the man element does come in sometime. Like if you do find a trade route, then I think people are going to be like, oh, we got to stop so and so. They've got like a trade thing going on. We got to strap some guns on and go over there and blow them up a couple times. But like most of the time, people are kind of doing their own thing, and there are going to be interspersed moments of interaction. And I really love the quests that kind of encourage that. Like sometimes there'll be quests that are like you have to be next to someone, and then you both do a heist or you save them while they're stranded, and like that kind of thing is kind of cool. But just a quick another quick touch point. This game is in the same genre as a game I used to own and I've since sold called Star Wars Outer Rim, which is another space sandbox game. And this game I like so much more. And it's weird because I like quarry designs normally, but Outer Rim feels so much less imaginative and so much more clinical in the way that it occurs. I don't really like sandbox board games that much, except this one.
Mm.
And I think part of it is that I think in order for the sandbox game to feel like sandboxy enough, there needs to be this amount of mechanics and things that you do have to be going back to the rule book
Right.
to look up these situations. Like if you can easily internalize all the possible things that can occur, it's almost like the game isn't big enough for like this genre. It kind of
Right.
has to have that scope of like, wow, like I don't know what's going to happen, in order to sort of create that feeling of space exploration sufficiently, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, I could see that. I buy that. That you need the breadth of mechanics in order to really have a true sandbox experience where people can truly decide like between a vast array of like interesting options. And this does that for sure. There's always something kind of fun and interesting that you do on your turn. Even down to and I think we should talk about the shipbuilding a little bit, but
Oh yeah.
just kind of as a basis for the shipbuilding, a kind of jumping off point, I love in this game, and it feels very sandboxy. It feels very open that if you end your turn on a planet and you're allowed to do that phase that you only get when you're on a planet, what is it called? The status phase,
Like
econ
business
phase?
phase,
The
Business
business
phase,
phase,
yeah.
yes.
business phase, yeah.
You can sell the parts on your ship at cost and put on new parts. And so you don't lose money by switching out parts on your ship. You could fully recustomize your ship every round as long as you're ending your turn on a planet, which is a requirement, and it might not be quite as easy as it sounds at first glance if you haven't played this game because the planets aren't everywhere necessarily. But it's very, very doable. And the ability to like re-gear, like kind of looking at the end of your turn and going, ooh, this part of the board just opened up and I'm gonna go like farm that. Maybe I'll switch out my blaster for more storage space and a bigger thruster or something like that. I mean, to me, even that part of it is really, really cool.
Yeah, you're basically playing Tetris, and the confines of the Tetris space depend on the ship you have. Like the higher the tier ship, typically the more space you have. But then each
Mm,
individual ship, and there are a lot of ships, also has like a different shape. And
yeah.
I assume there's some balance that goes into it. Like, certain ships that might have higher stats in some area might have smaller storage space or vice versa. bigger storage space, less
Yeah.
speed, that
I
kind of
think
thing.
the level one ships all kind of will bounce between like you have a trade-off between, one extra storage space or one extra of your free move,
The
the
impulse.
the impulse. Like so you might have 11 storage space and a 3 impulse or like a 12 storage space and 2 impulse. I don't think there's any that actually have 2 impulse at level 1, but just as an example, there's usually a 1-to-1 trade-off there on the level 1s. And then on top of that playing the Tetris game, and I feel like they have done a good job of shaping the ships in a way that you do have to make interesting decisions based on the ship that you have. There's also little upgrades that come with the ships that are unique to the particular ship that you've ended up
Yeah, and
with.
they're really, really cool. They're
Yes.
awesome.
And it's like it makes you feel really different from the other people, and it does push you in a particular direction.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also like that as you level up, you get to keep the upgrades that you had for your lower tier ships.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about that with the ship upgrade.
Yeah, so you have to spend a little bit to get a ship upgrade, but yeah, you end up getting a new upgrade every time you level up your ship, and you keep the old one. So you can kind of end up with a lot of different unique ships depending on what path you take with the different like ships as you level up. Like, and I think there's probably some that synergize a lot better than others, but I don't know. Depends on how fast you're making money as well. And you're also incentivized to get the tier 2 ship because it like gets you some points, in the tier 3.
Yeah. Yeah. It feels like a very natural progression in the game of like, oh, I need that level 2 ship because well, it's going to get me points towards the objective. It's going to get me more space where I can, put more stuff on the ship. It's going to get me another ability, so I'm like cooler. That part of the game is really, really well done, and I think pretty central to Xia working for me, the ship building and the ship upgrading.
There's something thematic about it too, where it's like, like squaring the circle in my brain is like it's like, oh, we took the ship computer from the last one, we still got a little piece of the swamp rat in her, you
Yes.
know?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
We put some
Yeah.
of the numerator into the denominator.
Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a really terrible dad joke. I think also the titles are kind of fun, where like a lot of the titles are actually pretty difficult, but like you get some sort of permanent perk when you fulfill them. And there's some sometimes funny stuff, like Blake was chasing this one last game, which was like you have to fly through a bunch of asteroids without basically your ship blowing up without using shields. So it's basically like being a hotshot pilot that successfully, flew through a bunch of successive asteroid fields without the ship exploding, and like people recognize he was like, oh, that's him. He's the guy. I don't remember what was the name. It was like what was the name of the
I
title
thought
Ah,
it was
again?
like Daredevil or something like
Yeah,
that.
it
I
was
don't
something
know.
like
yeah.
that, but it was pretty cool.
Yeah. The titles are pretty fun. They just kind of come out as people earn points in the game, and then they're not given to the person that earned the points, though. It's just like now a new thing to shoot for. And it not only gets you points, but also gets you another unique ability. And it kind of feels like, oh, yeah, my crew's badass. My pilot's badass. Like they can do this or do that. So just more ways to kind of differentiate your ship from others throughout the game.
Yeah, that
It,
system of like anybody advancing sort of triggering these events and titles coming out is it kind of reminds me of Andromeda's Edge a little bit, although this game came earlier. But it's in the sense of like I do like that part of Andromeda's Edge and I like that part of this game where like anybody doing stuff will sort of put more things out for everyone to sort of interact with.
yeah,
And just as sort of a natural progression of playing the game.
right. This is sort of the realm of stuff, the ship stuff, the unique stuff that each player can do that I think if we haven't harped on it enough, no is a really, really fascinating and fun part of this game. We started off with like, ooh, there's a few frustrations here regarding the rule book and, you know, that sort of some of the overhead, that sort of stuff. But genuinely, such a cool game, such a cool experience it provides. Also, like every ship has like a painted miniature that looks
Oh
so
yeah.
cool.
Yeah, it
Like
is pretty
that's a
cool.
fascinating part. It adds to that element. Like It's important for a board game to recognize like what is going to help the player really feel out the experience I'm trying to give them. This game does a good job of that. And the painted ships is massive in that realm of like, ooh, I've got like there's the swamp rat on the board. It looks like the thing on my card, on my player board, whatever. It's like that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Should we hop into ratings?
yeah, sure.
I'm up for that. Let's do it. Who would like to start? Get my number.
Yeah, let me think.
I can throw mine out if you guys want to anchor in your brains before I start
Okay.
talking.
Well,
I'm
no,
already an
Um,
no.
anchor and I'm locked in.
Okay, no promises, but go ahead.
I think she has got like a solid 7.5 for me. I I think I'll play it like most of the time. It didn't like blow me away, but it's very unique. Like and it reminds me a little bit of like there's like a it's like outsider art, you know? There's a bit of a like this is definitely like something that wouldn't exist without Kickstarter. Um it's like it's doing something that's pretty unique and it's got some quirks and it's got some a little bit of like some funkiness. You know, it's not the most elegant game, but it's fun and it's got a lot of character. I like it.
Yeah, that seems like a really reasonable rating to me. Um, One thing I was thinking about while trying to come up with my rating is like, damn, that player reference is gonna be a fucking game changer.
It's a revolution. It'll
Like,
revolutionize the gameplay. Yeah.
and this might be a little bit speculative because I did have problems with the game lacking that, and it's not like inherently part of the game. I'm gonna give it a rating with my assumed like, okay, it's gonna be streamlined a little bit now that I have the rules in front of me. And with that, I'm gonna give it an 8. Um, the game is really, really unique. I do really, really enjoy talking about it during the game and seeing the little things that come up and when it feels like you can make a play for one of these titles or well, I'm gonna upgrade my ship and oh, I'm suddenly finding these synergies with my ship, whatever it might be. Those are exciting, fun moments for me. And I don't know. It's just like solid. It does what it sets out to do in my mind. And I also think this is the type of game that, if I was like invited over to play it outside of like our normal, playtime, I'd be like, "Ooh, I really want to do that." So yeah, for me, an 8.
Well, you guys, I'm gonna echo most of what you guys said. I think I'm coming in at an 8 along with Blake. Uh, I think that most of what they've said, I agree with. This is a really fun game, but you kind of have to be in the right mindset for it, and you have to have the right group of people that are going to be treating it with the appropriate level of seriousness, which is not a whole lot. And I think that I, I think this is about as good as a game that you can make of its genre, which is an 8. And I think part of that is that ultimately this game, despite being like the best realized game of its genre, in my opinion, having played not just Outer Rim but also Western Legends and a few other things and like Merchants and Marauders, I think that all these games kind of suffer from there being like a good amount of downtime usually. And this game does have that issue as well. And there's not really a good way to solve it because it does meet like you kind of want to feel like I can do so many different things on my turn. But this game does suffer from that. But nonetheless, it's really fun, and the wild and crazy aspects that we've talked about a lot mean that even if it's not something that's directly going to impact you on your turn, sometimes somebody else's turn is going to have a bunch of really funny stuff happen that you'll be happy that you were like there to spectate or experience Schadenfreude over. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, that's where I'm at. And returning to area control, we have Silos, which is a re-release by Bitewing Games, my beloved, of Municipium, which is an old area control game that has been described by the Bitewing Games guys as Reiner Knizia's answer to El Grande. And so this game is definitely bears some similarities to El Grande. I don't know if it's an answer or perhaps even a question for El Grande, but setting that aside, this is a retheme from ancient Rome to aliens abducting humans in rural America, which is honestly hilarious.
Yes. It really, really is funny. The theme works so well for this rule set. I do just want to say on the name though, before we get too into it, is this an acronym or is it an initialization, right? Because this is Silos, secret interlopers from outer space. You know what I mean? So if you call it Silos, you're saying it's an acronym. But if it's SILOS, short for secret interlopers from outer space, you know what I mean? The Silos has a nice ring to it. It feels like they're trying to make it an acronym, you know?
Hmm. Well, there are
Hmm.
silos in the box art, so I'm going with silos.
That's fair. There are silos in the box art, although not really in the game,
It's
which is kind of
interesting.
interesting.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
are not in the game, but they
they
are
couldn't
in the
work that
box
one
art.
in. Anyways, a small aside on that.
But yeah, this game is uh relatively straightforward design for Reiner. I feel like a lot of Reiner games are like, here's this kind of this genre of game, but it's going to have some sort of a couple wrinkles in it that are really wild. I think as far as Reiner game goes, this is pretty straightforward. That's not to say that it isn't, that it doesn't have its own depth of strategy and, interesting things going on. But I think this is like maybe more approachable is the word I'm thinking of. Because I think even though, for instance, Samurai, which is rules light, is actually very complicated and it's very easy for you to make a huge mistake early on. And it might be even be like intimidating for someone to play it with people who are more experienced players. I think this one has a silly enough theme, and the gameplay is pretty easy to understand once you get going. And the sort of relatively limited amount of possible things you can do in your turn, which is also a little bit on Reiner-like, because normally Reiner is like, put a tile down in one of 1,000 different permutations and on the board. This time, you're just moving two guys along the roads to a place that they can reach, and you're either playing a card from your limited use cards or taking a card from the deck. And when you actually play the game, you realize the turns are actually pretty simple. And there is a lot going on, and there's stuff you have to pay attention to on the board. But as an entry level area control game, I think this is like pretty much what you want for entry level area control. You can show this to somebody who's not well versed in Matago and FFG and what have you, and I think they'll get the gist of it, and they'll kind of understand whether they like area control or not from this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would say so. It helps that, oftentimes the most complicated thing in an area control game is, okay, now you need to move your army. What the hell are you going to do?
Yeah, it's
You
simple
know?
in this one. Yeah.
In this game, most turn it kind of preps you for the big move, right? Because every turn you can do the two moves, either one guy twice or two guys once. And that like little maneuvering around, you start to go, oh, because I move, it does lead you naturally into like, it's not too complicated in that realm. And then if you do bus station, you have to move all your guys. It's still what, only seven guys or something like that.
Yeah,
Um,
there's not too many.
yeah,
I don't
it's
I don't
it's not
remember.
anything too crazy. And a lot of the time you'll look at it and you go, bus station, this one's going all the way across the board, and then I'm going to rearrange these three. But you might not even move all seven of them because usually you've gotten pretty much where you want to be.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, there's not a crazy amount that you have to decide in terms of positioning in this game. It's more like you're putting into play a more an overarching strategy, and there are going to be some key moments when you use your limited one-time use cards.
Yeah. It's very manageable to keep track of in your brain. It's always either two moves, which is just like pretty easy to keep track of. Okay, I'm moving one guy twice or like two different guys one time. Or it's you could literally just pull everything off of the board that you have and then put them down however you want them to be.
Right,
Like those are the two options in terms of like moving your dudes. Is either you're bus stationing or using one of your like basic powers to just move everybody
right.
everywhere. So there's
That
not
that
like,
buzz station isn't limited, makes it even easier than some other games is like regular move option, you know?
Well, another
yeah,
thing that's kind of streamlined while we're talking about this is that there's also no deployment. Like
Mm,
you're not
yeah.
building more guys. The only real modification of your meeple that's happening mid-game is the ability to educate them and
Yes.
send them to university to receive their little graduate hats, which is really cute. Um, but basically doubles their power when you determine who is in control of a specific area on the board, which is very powerful. And I think the longer a game goes, the more important it will be. Who has the most of these will have the ability to dominate more areas easily than if
Yeah.
you've
Yeah.
been ignoring it.
I love the components for this game. The table presence and all that is excellent. They did a really good job. I'm glad that it's not like Rome themed anymore and
Yes.
brown.
Well, I wouldn't go
Um,
that far, but I mean, Bitewing. I mean, the thing is if it were Bitewing and they did a Rum thing, I'm sure they would have done a good job either
oh,
way.
they
I
would
mean,
have
like
done a good
like
job. Yeah.
Iliad and Icar look
Right.
great, and Zuadas looks great, and I think they just understand like the right level of like board gamey ness that you want.
Yeah,
Just give
the
me
guys
some.
over there are so smart with the theming, though. Like, I think back to Zuvadis and how much I love that the peacocks are what they chose for the animals that can move
Sure.
freely between the exhibits. Like, that is hilarious. And I think you have a similar vibe here where, you know, abducting these humans and, oh, the cow is,
The cow's
able to be
wild.
used as any human. Like, there's just little moments like that that are so funny. Oh, your people get better when you educate them and you I think that if there were a board game awards for like if there was an award for like best use of like modular components, I would give it to the hats in this game. Out of any game I've ever played. I think it's so funny to like slot on a little hat on top of your guy. And it's I've seen stuff like it before. I think of Andromeda's Edge and its predecessor, which is
Dwellings of
Dwellings.
Elder Vale.
and
Yeah,
Dwellings of
Dwelling has got
Eldervale.
the little
Yes.
the little roofs you put on your meeple to turn them, but
Yes,
you know,
it's reminiscent of that, but like it's like a little rubber hat. Like
it
it's just
is,
so
yeah.
funny, you
Well,
know?
I'm glad that they're rubber. That's another thing is it's a little fiddly to get the little roofs onto the meeples and dwellings, but in this game, like because the hats are rubber, it's actually pretty easy. This is like the most
Yeah,
minor of things to talk about ever, but it's the attention to detail, It's just very
right.
easy to do, and you're not
It's a
fiddling with it.
great use of a component and adds a lot to the flavor, I feel like. And this game is rich in terms of flavor.
Yeah. I'm going to bring this up. Do you remember when we talked about Rune Wars and I said one of the things that I really didn't like was how the deck of cards, it felt like the way to get better at the combat was to try to count cards.
Yes.
This one, the way to get better at the game is to actually count cards, and it works really well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
the whole game, the whole advanced strategy of the game is like being always aware of two things. One is the deck of cards, knowing the distribution of cards in the common deck, and the other is where's the UFO right now? I
Yes.
gotta get ahead of the UFO. Those are the two like super centralizing things that I think people need to look at. But sorry to interrupt you, Ben.
no, no, that's pretty much the
Yeah.
like the
Because there's
point I'm
only
making.
12
Yeah.
cards, There's only
Yeah,
12 of them.
Yeah, it's
It's
the
very
easily
deck is
trackable.
trackable. Yeah.
the,
Versus like, and that was the thing that they changed with this version of the game. They made that trackable. They identified that that was what needed to happen. So it's a great shout on Ben's part of like, yes, that works so well here.
Yeah.
Um,
It makes you
by
feel smart. Like, I don't know.
it
There's something about
does.
where you're like, oh, actually being, it's actually small enough that you can actually be tracking the distribution of the deck, which is fun.
But
Like,
it also leads to the moments where like statistically it is 85% that the next card is this, and then you're wrong, and it's like, oh,
Yeah.
what I mean? It doesn't always feel like amazing that like you were wrong, and statistically it all practically should have been the other thing, but it's also kind of leads to these funny moments. And because this is definitely more entry level, and as I mentioned, like a little more casual than some of the other Reiner games, I think that's fine and maybe even desirable to be able to like have this not be as daunting to a new player. To like, because like a new player of board games in general or area control games in general may not, it may be a demerit to the game's design if it were like the case that the common deck were too trackable. And I think what we have here is like it's trackable enough, but also not trackable too much to the extent that like if you're not counting the cards efficiently, that, you can't still win the game or at least, put up a good fight.
Yes, absolutely. Um, and some of that is that there are three cards in the deck that are extreme game changers depending on when they come out. There's two copies of one power and one copy of all powers. And basically, what these powers are, there's seven spots on the game board when you include the town hall. And when all powers comes out, you activate them sequentially, and whoever is in the lead in that spot in terms of the area control is going to get the benefit of that space. And the spaces are quite strong, and are basically the meat of the game. What these spaces do. Um, if one power comes out, each player, starting with the person who drew the card, it's their turn, and then in clockwise order, is going to get to select one spot that they are ahead of and activate their power. And that can be just when those come out, it's like always very, very massive. Versus the other two cards that are in the deck. One of them is Marked Specimen, which lets you get a random human out of the draw bag and put them on the map somewhere they're allowed to be. And you can plan around that quite easily, but it doesn't always comes out when you want it to. And the other one is the UFO Advance, which where the UFO is. It gives you an incentive to be in front of the UFO, which can sometimes be quite contrary to where you might want to be for Marked Specimen. So again, easy to track the four card types and their distribution. One all power, two one powers, four Marked Specimens, five UFO advances, but you never get to guarantee what is going to come out next. And so you do have that random element that leads to these fun, exciting moments and throws the game into flux at all times.
Yeah. You can't the and then the other mechanic I like is the three cards that you have that instead of drawing a random card, you can do those. So you can force a UFO advance or move everyone. You can activate all of the powers that you control, or you can like draw four of the dudes from the bag and like put them wherever you want to. And all of those are really all of those are one-time abilities that you use. And it's always pretty spicy as to when you are able like to use them. I think usually you rip the your powers just whenever you think it benefits you the most. But there are times where it's just like, okay, I think I just need to do this so that I can get ahead on like the town hall, which is like the tie break, like determines the tie break.
Yes.
Sometimes like there's like I don't know. There's some like niche situations where you're just like, ugh, like I don't think this is like as efficient as it can be. Like I can't get everything that I want, but like I'm behind on university and I'm behind on the tie break, so I gotta just do this now.
Yeah, absolutely. And the tiebreak is a really big deal in this because, again, you only have seven guys and there are seven spots. You're not going to win by going everywhere. You're going to have to select your battles. And you might be selecting the same battle as someone else. Maybe two people are going for the news station. You both have two guys there. Well, guess what? It's not a tie. Never is going to be a tie 2-on-2. You're going to look at the order on the town hall. And you could totally have a situation where let's say early in the draw through the 12 card deck, one of the one powers has come out and the all powers has come out. So there's only one power left in that deck. And there's 10 cards. It's really low chance. You might make a play where you get into the town hall, use your powers card and force the issue where now you're winning the tiebreak. And whether or not that play pans out and is good for you is very much dependent on when that next card comes out, when that next um, one power comes out. Because if then you move out of the town hall and start trying to capitalize on your advantage that you gained by becoming first in the tiebreak order, all of a sudden this random card could come out. And so there's some interesting maneuvering that goes on in this game, let's say. And, you know, the area control element stays interesting despite the limited number of spaces and options because you're balancing between, well, when are the power cards going to come out? When is the station going to advance? When is Marked Specimen going to come out? And I'm going to need to compete on a spot purely from the perspective of getting, more victory points and rather than, furthering my position in the game's, long term.
Yeah. I think this game is again, it's like Reiner Knizia just as he does it. Like like there's the simplicity versus like depth kind of like scale, and he just there's like the Reiner Knizia zone where he always is making these games that are very simple mechanically but have a lot of strategic depth. And he just hits that like bullseye like over and over and over again. It's kind of frustrating how good he is at like hitting that area. But like, yeah, most of the like it's a simple game, but there's a lot going on. And there's a lot like that you could, you know, like there's a good amount of skill expression even just with like the limited things that you can do on your turn.
I mean,
Absolutely.
there's a lot of skill expression in Raw, and all you can do in that game is two things. I mean, how does he do it? And but this game, there's more you can do than Raw, and the random elements in this game are relatively few. Really, the deck is the main random element because the way that the things come out of the bag is actually limited by color-coded squares on the board to where they can come out. And the order in which they come out, like if you pull a random four, like you don't know exactly what color they're going to be, but you do know that like if you were wanting a certain color, that you would be wanting to have a presence on certain spaces where they must go. And so you are able to plan a lot in this game and sort of engineer scenarios that will be to your benefit or, follow your plan. Like the randomness isn't undermining your ability to be strategic. And that's always something I like to see where like there are these elements that are interesting and can make it fun, but they aren't like undermining your ability to just play the game in a smart way or a way that makes you feel smart, I guess is more important.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is pretty critical here in that when the guessing at what's going to be next is informed by, good stats and then it pays off, you do just feel really, really smart. Even though it's like it's quite a simple thing,
Yeah.
there's 12 cards, but like it really does have this moment of like pure joy, like, yeah, we've had a few of that around the table with this one. Like, yes, I needed the your powers and I made the calculated risk, and this is an important part, right? It's not just what's most likely to come out. It's like, okay, well, the one power, there's two of them left out of six cards, right? The odds are like, not amazing that it's going to come out, but it's quite good. It's like you might make the decision, well, I'm either going to lose the game or win the game, depending on if that card is there or not. But you can make that play and you can have those moments and have those payoffs. And that's so cool in this.
And
Yeah.
oh, sorry, go ahead, Ben.
No, there's a lot of playing to your outs. I like a lot of the time in this game of just trying to figure out what's in the deck and how, with the two movements of the guides that I have, I like how I can maximize my chances of benefiting from any of the possibilities that can come out. I think that's like a big part of it is trying to play like, as many of the like possibilities as you can. And then there's sometimes where it ends up narrowing down to where it's like, if it's the UFO advance, I win. If it's not, then like I don't, like, then it doesn't matter. So like you just go for the like assuming it's the UFO advance, knowing the odds, and then when it pays out, you feel really good, like you said.
Yes.
And speaking of the board, I think the design of the board is pretty intentional, like the paths that lead to some places. Like it all fits in the theme, and so it's easy to sort of ignore that, like, oh, it would make sense that the town hall will be next to the sheriff's office. But in terms of the gameplay, like I think stuff like the shopping mall being the furthest place away from the bus station, I think is really good because the shopping mall is extremely powerful. Like it might be one of if not the best spaces. And so putting it the furthest spot away from the spot that would let you easily sort of redeploy from the shopping mall to somewhere else is good because it's like you're making a commitment to be in that corner of the board because it's harder to get out of there. Like you have to make the as Blake said earlier, you've only got seven guys. Like you have to make decisions on where they're going. You can't have one in each place. And especially if you want a majority in important places, you have to be committing pretty heavily in a few spaces. Um, yeah,
Yeah. I do wonder how this game would play at 4. It goes up to what is the highest player count for
it
this? Is
goes
it
up to 4. It's 2 to 4.
4? Right. I do wonder how it would play at 4, and if I don't think it would be too much different, but I think you end up where the tiebreak matters a lot more, and I feel like somebody might get left behind. It feels really good at 3, which is good for us because that's usually how many people we have playing it. But
Yeah.
4 might be a little, I feel like there might be a good amount more happening between your turns that is like kind of out of your control, you know?
Yeah,
I
there
think
is an
with
element of that with only two moves and trying to like encapture, what can I do to prevent myself from getting screwed over for the next two turns, even at three is like a little bit of an impossible task, right? You kind of have to surrender to the fact of like, what can I do that's best on this next draw, and not necessarily like try to be super defensive because people are going to get their people where they need to. It's just kind of how it works out. You can do a little bit of it, but yeah, with four, I feel like it would feel even more that way. Harder to defend.
Mhm. I would imagine that with 4, the tiebreak becomes less important because you're even more pressured to be committing to only a few spaces. There's 7 more dudes on the board, basically.
Mm,
And so you really have to be picking your battles that might be fewer in number than in 3 player, where you might be able to contest more spaces. And so because there are fewer number of people per space, the tiebreak is probably more important at a lower player count. But I'm just speculating. I mean, we'd have to play one at 4 to know for sure.
yeah, I could see it going either way. That's good reasoning, though. Um, yeah, I'm not quite sure.
Yeah.
Because like
The,
there's a benefit to coming in second when the
yes.
UFO comes by or when the spaces for citizens are filled. But there's no reason to be third anywhere, really.
Yeah.
So, like, if you got 4 people on the board, it's like, well, I'd be going way out of my way to even come in second here. Like, why not just abandon ship, pivot? Maybe I can sheriff's office them out of there later and then come in first or something. But,
It
you
might
know,
still be relevant to try to be ahead on the tiebreak from Town Hall with the people competing on the spots that you're at, though, So,
oh, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, in that
yeah,
sense, yeah.
a little hard to parse exactly how that would flesh out.
Yeah.
There is also an alternative rule set we've never played with where the buildings all do completely different things. Um, which could be interesting if we like play enough of this to where we, are you know, like getting wary of the base game and we want to mix it up. But
There
Base
is a
yeah,
game,
lot to explore with the base rule
the
set,
base
of
game
yeah.
course.
feels good. I mean, I don't feel really pressured to add any of the expansion stuff at this time. Um, at most, I was considering adding the crop circles thing, which is like you can like, sort of add a permanent power to different places. But the alternate location stuff, I'm probably not going to try unless we do sort of like play this a ton and we want to mix it up. But yeah, I mean, just
Yeah.
just the core game feels really solid.
I want to comment a little bit on an issue I have with this game, and that's that I think that the starting tiebreak order is a very big deal.
Hmm.
This is not a game where the tiebreak order is, rotating turn to turn or anything like that. If you think of something like dominant species, there is a space on the board that is pretty much going to get taken every single round that advances one player up on the tiebreak order. And so you always have a little bit of shifting. And in silos, the shifting of the tiebreak is a little bit random. You can force the issue, but sometimes it's harder to force the issue if you're losing on the tiebreak order than it is if you're winning on it. And oftentimes, even when the random moments that the tiebreak order can shift, which again are the 3 cards in the 12 card deck, the 1 power and the all powers. Sometimes the 1 power one, you don't even want to use that to do the town hall and shift the tiebreak order. Or you're putting a bunch of guys out, maybe you're putting 3 out of your 7 guys there in order to attempt, to be able to shift the tiebreak order when something comes out and you don't know when it's going to come out, well, you could end up in a situation where some other guy has, multiple people on the university spot, which is a common one that gets used during the one power card. And the university moves a bunch of their guys from the university to the town hall, puts a hat on one of them, which makes them even stronger. And, then the next person's going to do their one power. Well, if you're earlier in the turn order or later in the turn order from that person, you might not even be able to use the town hall off of one power because someone else just moved all their guys from the university into the town hall and now has more power than you there. So I do have a little bit of a issue from this game does have a lot of depth of strategy and you're playing through the randomness, and I find that very fun. But sometimes it can feel like a real desperate battle um, if you're starting out lower on the tiebreak. That's my opinion.
I think I agree with that. It does feel like a little bit arbitrary. Like, oh, this is the starting order. And like, I completely agree with you, Blake. But then I'm also on the other end thinking like, well, this is a game that needs a tiebreak, or else you're going to be tied so often in these locations.
Yes, it does
And
need it.
and given that the game needs a tiebreak like mechanism, which in this case is the town hall, like is there a way to make the starting turn order less arbitrary but also like have it be fair? Like I don't know if there's like a solution, I guess is my thing. It's like this is like a thing in the design you have to be wary of, but it's also like how do we fix it? You know? Um
I think that as just an idea, you could have an addition, like a fourth power card for everybody that allows them to manipulate the tiebreak order in some way. Perhaps it's a
hmm.
card that specifically activates the town hall. And so if they want to make a play where they move additional guys into the town hall and then forego drawing a card to change the tiebreak order, then they are able to do that. I think that could be a simple change that I'm not sure if it would work very well, but could at least be, you know, pushing towards the direction of how do we address this advantage to the starting, tiebreak winner.
Hmm.
Yeah. I think did is it such that the person who has the like highest tie break goes last in the like first, or is it do they also go first?
They
I
They go
also
can't.
go
they
first.
also go first.
I think an easy home rule might be to
Make
just
them
be
go
like,
last.
yeah, like
Yeah.
you could probably do that.
I think that's a good idea. Yeah, the I like both ideas. I think it's easier to do the go last thing. I think we even remarked on that last time we played, which was like maybe that person should just go last.
Yeah, 'cause part of it is too is because it's like if that person can go first, like I remember like my first turn when I started with like the highest tie break, it was like, man, I really should have just ripped like my powers on the first turn because like I was
Right.
winning in like four places. And then it was like and then I ripped it on the second turn and was still winning in four places. So it was like and then I
Yes.
ended up getting like a massive advantage in that game. So I think if you know what you're doing, it's pretty huge.
Do you guys remember if there's any relationship between where you choose to put your seven guys and the tiebreak order? Like not where, but when in turn order you get to do that in tiebreak order, or is that
I
unrelated?
think the placement order, I think the first player is first for all three things. So they're the first placement, they're first in the food chain like tiebreak, and they're also first to go.
Right. I think it's important then that they still place their guys first. So everybody else can then try to plan around the tiebreak winners' placements and undermine their ability to, win every spot.
Yeah.
That's not a huge complaint though, because not unlike Shia, this game is very much like a lighthearted, fun, you could even call it a beer and pretzels game, I think. Funnily enough, even though this game is kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum in terms of like rule breadth from Shia
True.
and like
Yeah.
decision space, I do find them similar in that regard of like, that it almost feels like a party game.
You could play this with your grandma. It passes
For
the grandma test, I
It
think it
I'd say
does.
does.
I'd say for a Reiner game, yes, but this is definitely more like strategic than a lot of games.
Yeah. Well,
But
so
like,
so is Shia though, right? I'm just
I
saying
guess,
that
yeah,
like, I could sit around and laugh about this one and oh my gosh, like oh the aliens, blah blah blah. Like the theme
yeah.
really shines through. It does give an experience. It is lighthearted, really. So to say that there's some, concern with the balance is more a testament to how into the game I get in terms of the strategy, despite its simplicity,
Mm.
than anything else, right? I don't want to try to take away too much from it with that.
Hmm.
Yeah. Okay, well, should we jump into ratings?
Sure, yeah.
Let's do that.
Cool.
Would you like to go
Um,
first, Will?
I guess I went last time, huh? I think this is another, sorry to be boring. I think this is another eight for me. Eight for me is like Tyrants. Uh, and so Tyrants, I feel like was my go-to entry-level area control game. I think this is like similar to Tyrants, where it's sort of like this very nice way to introduce people. The theme of this game is better than Tyrants for introducing people who aren't, you know, D&D nerds. So, um, just a very nice, like very solid design. And it's not gonna have the depth for me to, or not, it's not gonna have like the strategic, uh, it's not depth I'm thinking of, but like maybe consistency or sort of like, I don't know. It doesn't really have the meat on it to sort of go above an eight for me. Um, like I mentioned Samurai earlier, Samurai is probably a similar weight to this, but Samurai feels like it feels insanely complicated. Like everything you do is incredibly impactful. You have to be thinking about what everyone is doing constantly, and you have very limited resources, and you're running out every turn. And it's like this incredibly like high stress knife fight in a phone booth. And this game is really lighthearted. It's really fun. It's really approachable. So it's not, and I kind of like the samurai mindset more, where like I kind of like to have that kind of stress if I'm thinking about the games I really love. And so this game is not like that. But the reason I bring that up is to say that if this kind of game is to your taste, it could easily be above an eight. Like this is sort of the level of game you regularly play with your family or sort of a casual group. This is like a super fun time and like, it'll be a total blast. And I think it just depends what you're looking for in your area control game. And for the production and the sort of retheming they've done and the tweaks they've done, they did an outstanding job. I mean, this is definitely probably the best version of the game that they could have made. So kudos to Bitewing as usual. And
Yeah,
that's about where I'm at.
Yeah.
it seems very fair, an eight. I'm kind of between an eight and an 8.5, and I'm actually going to go with an 8.5. And let me tell you why. Because I do agree with most of your points, Will, and I think it's clear from the way I talked about this one that I do really like it. The reason I want to give it an 8.5 is the decisive moment, right? I love in a game when you make a cool play and you have that moment afterwards, like, oh, that felt so good. I felt so smart because it paid off. And it's very clear in that moment that it paid off. And that's like such a good feeling that it just makes me love a game when I have that. And something like Samurai or Huang, even though I think I enjoy the strategy behind them a little bit more, and there is a little bit more um a little bit less variance in the depth of strategy, let's say, a little bit more meat on it, as you put. I agree with that aspect of it. But sometimes we get to the end of a game of Samurai or, even the end of a, triggered event in Huang. And I sort of stop and I look at the board and I go, I don't know whether the plays I made were good or bad. I don't know what got me to the win at the end of those games. It's like a series of really small, important decisions, and every decision has so much weight. And in silos, every decision has a lot of importance, but not necessarily weight because of that variability factor. And so when there's a payoff, it's so clear and like, oh my gosh, he used his your powers and it paid off in this huge, huge way. And I love that element of it. And so, especially in a little bit more of a lighthearted game, to me, it all comes together in this package in terms of the theming, the randomness blending in with the strategy, blending in with these huge decisive moments. And that just works for me. It makes me excited to play it again. So 8.5 from me.
Yeah. 8.5 for me as well. I had that anchored before, just so you know.
Just so
Uh,
you know, I was anchored. I was anchored,
See, I
bro.
was anchored. I wasn't influenced. Okay. Um, yeah. I don't know if I have much more to say than what do you guys have, but uh, this is the like to the point earlier. This is the first game that has like a counting cards element that I actually enjoy, and it's interesting to note that that was like kind of an addition that this version of the game has, where they stripped the deck down to 12 cards instead of like whatever it was before, which was like more copies of the same stuff. I really like that it is countable, and I think that it uses cards as a randomizer the best that I've seen in just about any game, where like that actually matters that the cards are like a randomizer. I think the only one that maybe does that like the same or better is like I don't know. Like a trading card game like Magic the Gathering, where you know your deck very well, and so you know the distribution of stuff in your deck, and you know what like the chances that
May,
you're going to get the right hit, you
may I
know?
offer a game that I feel similarly about with this card counting?
Yeah, sure.
Inish. In a big
Mm,
way, actually.
Mm.
To me,
yeah.
the card counting in this feels like a
Your Honor,
slightly
may I...
simplified Inish.
Blake said Inish, so I'm going to raise this to an 8.5.
But I agree that that is a strong part of this game for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. You guys might have convinced me a little bit. Yeah, I agree with, I'm like between an 8 and 8.5 as well, and I kind of like lean down. But, maybe Tyrant should be an 8.5 as well, because it's like, I don't think I put this above Tyrants, but maybe they should both be 8.5s, and like maybe I shouldn't be thinking about bringing this down to Tyrants level. I don't know. But either way, I like the game a lot, obviously. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, this
It's a
is
good
one that's
game.
worth checking out. And I
Yeah.
feel like it hasn't gotten enough recognition. I mean, we talked about Xia, which of course is a great game. Xia was ranked 191 on BGG. Silos is ranked 9305. I mean, for a great reprinting, retheming, and slight rebalancing with the decreased deck size of a Reiner game, come on, man. This deserves to be way higher up. It deserves way more recognition. I totally encourage people to go out, and it's not like a super pricey game either. This is one worth having in your collection.
oh sure. And I think this is a game that definitely fits in well with like a bunch of great like light area control games you can just play with a bunch of different groups of people. As Ben said, it probably passes the grandma test. You can play this with your family. It's not some nerdy theme. It's something they'll find fun. I think
Yeah,
it's it just seems like a nice, not definitely a nice one. And as I said, it's like because it's more casual, you're not going to be stressing people out like with Samurai or Huang, where they're going to be the possibilities will be dizzying to them. And this one, I think it's easier to teach.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, another episode. We did it. We came back.
Yes, thank
We
you
did
for watching.
With any luck, we'll be back next week instead of with a long gap because we have stuff lined up. I promise. I promise we've got stuff lined up to talk about. So
it.
catch you in the next one.
Peace.